All right, everyone. So we have a betting preview for a major game we're about to see. Iowa State versus Kansas State. This is week 0 game. I'm going to be all over this thing, and it's two ranked teams. So we have Kansas State University, who is ranked 17, and Iowa State University, who was ranked 22nd. And Kansas State is going to be at home in this game. So we're going to start, and we're going to try to give you some arguments on both sides, who we think it's going to cover all of that. But I want to start by talking about what this line actually opened at, because it's always crucial when looking at these bets. So this line opened up at 3.5 Kansas State. It is now moved, as you could see, to -3. Now, this is a pretty big deal if you are an Iowa State bettor, because obviously now you're not getting, now you're going to push instead of cover on that number. And Kansas State for you, it's honestly an even bigger deal because once again, now you're getting a push instead of a loss on the 3. So I think that's always important to keep in mind as you see this line movement. I understand it's only 0.5, but all these kind of line movements, it's crazy because especially when I first started sports betting, it was like you would think point 0.5, what's the big deal? It really does matter, right? It's pretty nuts here. The other interesting fact, and then we're going to get into both teams, but the other interesting fact is if you look at the first half, okay, the spread of the first half is 2.5. It's basically 3. So if you think Kansas State is really going to come out and just blow the doors off them, -3 isn't bad. If you think they're going to come off early and get going, -2.5. If you want to do it more in the first half, pretty wild to me to see a spread of 3 and a spread of in the first half of 2.5. Right, this is a really weird opportunity. Or if you think Kansas State's going to start slow, maybe you get on the Iowa State +2.5. Like there's a lot of weird stuff going on with the fact that the game line is -3 and the first half line is -2.5. But let's get into the teams. So we're going to start with why I think Iowa State could cover or not cover. So last year, Iowa State was 8-6 against the spread. So that's not really bad. It's not really good, but it is above that 50% mark. So they're getting their quarterback, their running backs back. Okay. They do have those, but they lost some wide receivers. So when you're thinking about the offense, and especially in college, a quarterback coming back, having, some familiar faces on the squad is going to be a big help. Now, losing your receivers might be a big deal, but it's expected that this offense is probably going to be around what it was last year, according to a lot of the research that I've done. The defense also is slated to be good. So, what you're looking at is a team that's going to be pretty well balanced here, and probably pretty similar to last year, which is why I think even looking at that spread last year is crucial, right? Because if you think a team's going to be around the same, and kind of looking back at what they did last year is really going to be key. All right. The next one is moving on to Kansas State. So they get in their quarterback back as well. They did lose the running back. Now, once again, this stuff does matter, especially in college. And I know there is a pipeline of getting players, but sometimes, unless you're, an Alabama, unless you're an Ohio State, it's not always that you get those freshmen that come in and can perform, or people even that are maybe a little further along the line that come in and perform. So losing these key players is something to keep in mind. The offense is also, though, slated to be pretty good. Okay, this is not an offense that's expected to take some major step back. It's one of the reasons that they are the 17th ranked team, right, coming in. The defense does have some questions, and look, it doesn't. Once again, when we're doing week 0 bets, you got to understand that you're going off of what you're looking at in terms of the roster, but you don't really know, and so the defense might have some questions, but they could come out and just put on a showcase that no one expected. So always, I'm just kind of giving you what the research that I've done is showing, but at the end of the day, this is week 0, so you cannot really look too far into anything because we just don't know how these teams are going to look. So last year against the spread, they were 4-9, Kansas State. So this is really bad, right? That's a bad mark against the spread. Now, that doesn't mean that they can't turn it around this year, but it always is important. And one of the things I love about against the spread is not, or looking at those numbers, is not just to kind of know, all right, would you have been profitable betting on this team last year? It's a little deeper than that, right? I like to see it as a judge against Vegas, right? Is Vegas or whatever the line is, right? And it's not always Vegas. Sometimes it's the public money or the sharp money, whoever kind of has more on that side. Are they being overhyped? And so clearly last year the lines were a lot they were thinking a lot higher of Kansas State than were, you know, reality. So I think that is something to keep in mind. And the last thing I want to look at here for before we give what we're going to be playing is the Iowa State versus Kansas State game last year. So this took place on 11/30/24. Okay, so that was last November. And Iowa State, this was remember at home, was a 2.5 point favorite in that one, and they won by 8 points. So remember, when we're talking about, past years, right, and them playing, if we think both of these teams are going to have somewhat similar looks to last year, and I'm not saying the rosters are similar, right? I understand there's changes on both sides, but we're talking about at those key positions. Last year at home, Iowa State was able to get the nod and win by 8. They were 2.5 point favorites. This time we are getting the money. All right. So for my bet in this one, I'm leaning to Iowa State +3 on the money line in this case. It kind of depends whether you want to risk it or not. If it moves to 3.5, I'm definitely going to be all over again if it moves back to 3.5. But I definitely think that I'm going to be going that way. I just think you look at Iowa State, and they're just a team as of right now coming into the year that I trust a little bit more. And remember, we're talking about looking at it through the lens of the line, right? So if last year Kansas State's 4-9 against the spread, it's one of those things where, okay, the public or Vegas or the sharps, whoever is kind of putting the money in to craft these lines, they just have a little bit of a too good of a feeling about this team. And if last year, you saw an Iowa State team, granted at home, if you saw them 2.5 point favorites win by 8, do I think that could carry over to us at least covering a 3.5 point spread in this one? I definitely do. Right. And so I'm just going off because remember, this is week 0. We don't really have that kind of full record of, we don't have all this kind of footage of us to watch of these two teams. I just trust Iowa State a little bit more off the bat, and I would feel a little bit more nervous going with Kansas State. But at the end of the day, this is gambling, right? So we could end up looking silly with this one. But put in the comment section below what you think. Remember, there's no profit guaranteed from this. We're just having a good time talking about bets. Put in the comment section below who you think you're going to play and why, and we will see you next time.